Okay, guys, good evening. I just want to quickly jump on and give you a wee update about notes of interest. Now, this has come about because last week one of our sellers actually came to us and said they put a note of interest through their solicitor with the same solicitor, work that one out, about a property they were interested in. But the property got sold before they actually even got a chance to find out about it, even though they had a no interest in it. Now, I'm not very sure about where that stands, but I'll cover exactly what a note of interest is and how we apply it. Okay, a note of interest is a way of your solicitor letting the seller's solicitor or estate agent know that you might be interested in purchasing a property of their clients. Okay, so for example, we have a property on and you note an interest. Ideally, you want to note an interest through a solicitor. It gives it some weight. You can note an interest yourself, but then it's just your word against the other person's word, if anything, if you're not notified. Whereas if you notify it through a solicitor and you do your note of interest, then it's clearly through a solicitor. So if anything does happen, it's like, well, we did tell you because I did it independently through a solicitor. The intention is that the property won't be sold in the meantime to someone else before you have a chance to make an offer on the property. That's what a note of interest is. It's telling someone that you want to be advised if there's any changes in the circumstances of the property. In other words, if anybody else puts an offer in, ideally, that's what should actually happen. The Law Society of Scotland is actually quite clear on this, has the rules about how notes of interest should be treated by solicitors at a closing date. Now, we go one step further than that. Now, these only apply to solicitors, but as I say, we actually go a wee bit further than this. However, so if the seller's agent is a non-solicitor estate agent, they are not bound by the same rules, but we do this, and we do a bit more. So what a note of interest to us is, if someone comes along through a solicitor and says, look, we're interested in that property, could you advise us if anything happens with that property? At least what's going to happen here is if we get an offer the seller cannot refuse, and we have notes of interest before that offer's put to us, we will still go to the parties, have a note of interest to say that we have an offer on the table. Are you in a position to proceed? Now, that's what should be done. I'm not very sure what happened last week, but I don't have a feeling that was done with our seller. But it's not our concern. It's a part of their solicitor with their seller solicitor, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it was an independent company. That's why this subject came up. They were asking what happens with notice of interest, and I says, well, that's how we treat it. So the notice of interest are clear here. If we get an offer on the table from anyone, we will go back to people with a note of interest and say to them, we have an offer on the table. Are you in a position to proceed? Do you want to make an offer at this point in time? Now, if you're not in a position to proceed, really, it's well, okay, you're not in a position to proceed. If you're in a position to proceed, then we've advised you an offer is about to be considered to possibly be accepted. Do you want to do something now? And if you've got your chance to do something at that point in time, that's how a note of interest should be treated, clearly, because it gives you that heads up. And then what will happen is once we've gone around all the notes of interest from the people, we will then take the offer that's on the table to the seller and say to them, this is the position right now with this offer, and this is who we have potentially to offer as well, because we've checked the notice of interest. Some people can offer, some people can't. Maybe no one can offer at all at this point in time. That's why they've just put no interest. So then the seller would have to consider at that point in time that one offer on the table. One of the other things is, I should stress here as well, there's no guarantee that the property won't be sold, even though you've had noted an interest. This is what happened last week to people that had asked for my advice on it. The selling agent has to take their client's instructions as to whether the seller wants to go back to the party who has noted interest to give them an opportunity to offer. Now, that's where we do stop. That is what the Law Society suggests, but that's where we don't. We don't follow that. We follow a more, dare I say, moral protocol. We follow a more moral protocol, ethical. In other words, we'll go back to people before that offer's taken to the seller. It's not fair to someone who notes of an interest to say, could you give me an update on anything, any movement? If you then rush straight away with an offer and tell the seller straight away, they take the offer and they accept the offer, and then you say, well, wait a minute, you never even told me about it at all. That's essentially what happened last week to our sellers with another property they wanted to offer on. This is why I've covered the notice of interest and what that really means. Yeah, thank you, Stephen. Yep, good. That's great. It's useful for you. So I've just put a wee clarification in there about the notice of interest and what that actually means to people. Let me read the Law Society, what they actually say. It's a bit gobbledygook. I'm kind of trying to work head for tail what it actually meant. Solicitors acting for prospective purchasers should advise their clients that noting interest will not guarantee their clients an opportunity to offer. And if the clients are not in a position to put in an early offer, they may not be allowed an opportunity to submit an offer at all. Well, that's clearly the case. Now, let me be clear about this. You can still offer, even though you think you're not in a position, and even though anybody tells you you're not in a position because of the way your circumstances are. For example, if you have an offer, and I'll probably cover offers in a wee bit more detail later on in another vlog. But if you potentially offer, and it's maybe subject to your house selling, it's maybe subject to a certain entry date, it's maybe subject to a certain condition, which is quite material, you can still offer. It's up to the seller whether they want to reject it or not. It's not up to the estate agent, or it's not up to the estate agent whether they reject that. It's up to the seller whether they want to reject that offer or not. So you can still offer regardless. There is a misconception here that you need to be in a position where you've got money in the bank or a mortgage and you're ready to go. You can still offer on a property even though you have a condition like a property to sell or anything like that, because it's potentially, we might have been out to your property and we might actually said, this will sell, no bother. And we know what this will sell for. And we can tell that to our seller and say, look, I would recommend possibly that you would accept that because it makes absolute sense because we could sell this one. And this is all about chain building as well. That's another story completely as well. So that's what they say in the solicitors, the Law Society. They actually go on to say, whereas a closing date has not been fixed, the seller solicitors should advise their clients of any offers received, whether before or after negotiations with another prospective purchaser have commenced, and should intimate that the clients are entitled but not obliged to accept a second offer, notwithstanding acceptance of what may have given another prospective purchaser either verbally or qualified in writing. So I think the Law Society's rules a bit more ethical on our part, to be honest. Bit of gobbledygook, but as I said, this is all about making sure if you've got no interest that we'll tell you beforehand that we have an offer coming in before we actually take it to the seller to make sure you're in a position to proceed. That's really what it comes down to. If you need any more advice, please feel free to ask us. Please feel free to come forward. Please feel free to message us direct. We're more than happy to take your questions or the information you'd like to know of anything surrounding noting and interest. This is actually a really good one as well, and this is what you should make sure your estate agent does not divulge to anybody at all. It's the number of notes of interests you have on your property sale. There's a misconception, and we get it quite a lot, where solicitors phone us and other estate agents phone us and say to us, how many notes of interest do you have on your client's property? And we say, well, that's nothing to do with you at all. Why? Everybody else tells us. I went, well, that's not the point. What would happen if you were advising your client to put in an offer for our client, and then we turned around and said, well, they had no notes of interest on their property at all? You'd immediately go back to your client and say, put in a lower offer. But then equally, if we said we've got 15 notes of interest, you'd equally go back to your client and say, you should put in a really high offer to get the property. So the key here is you shouldn't, even as an estate agent or solicitor, should not be telling anyone else other than their seller how many notes of interest they have on their property. No one else should know that information except the seller themselves. And so hopefully that's clarified everything on notes of interest, and that's given you a wee bit more insight into how we do it and how everybody else effectively does it. Okay, bye-bye for now.